Our next topic is questioning. As coaches, if we're not there to instruct and just give people answers, then questioning is clearly important. But it's a difficult area. So let me share some of my experience and ideas about it. It's not easy because picture a situation where it's early days in the relationship between the coach and the client. Trust hasn't really fully developed yet. Why would it? You don't really know each other yet. If you try to dig too deep too quickly with some questioning, then you're going to get some resistance. You're going to scare your client, potentially. So there are a number of things to think about that we might need to pay attention to first to really be able to ask great questions. Now, one of them is that thing about the quality of the relationship. If there are ways that we can build trust in the relationship, we need to be talking about things like safety and confidentiality, the limits of confidentiality, boundaries, expectations. That's going to be dealt with in a later video. Those things all do help the relationship, but it's also important not to rush things. You need to demonstrate that you are trustworthy. Secondly, our emotional state, and I'm talking both about the coach and the client here. Sometimes, especially if the client has just rushed in, they're running a little bit late, they haven't had a chance to think about it, they're not in a great emotional state. They may be stressed out about something. But sometimes it's myself. Sometimes I'm not in the right emotional state. Maybe I'm stressed. Maybe I'm rushed off my feet. Maybe I'm not in the right state of mind to really be in a great conversation with somebody. Now, we just need to be honest about those things, and it may be important just to take even 10 minutes to say, look, before we start, let's just get a cup of coffee. Let's just have a chat. Let's go for a walk. Let's do something, because we just need to get rid of all of that baggage that we're currently carrying before we start. The third thing is to be thinking about the difference between intention and outcomes, because sometimes when a client expresses themselves, what they're expressing isn't actually what they intended, and it doesn't have the result that they intended to have. So we need to think about communication in those terms, and sometimes just do a bit of remedial work on those things, do a bit of work to build the quality of the relationship, a bit of work to make sure that we're in the right emotional state before we start, and that we're connecting outcomes with intentions along the way. Okay, so that being said, some specific skills about questions. Now, first is the difference between open and closed questions. And even experienced coaches will tell you that questions need to be open. By and large, they do, but there is also a place for closed questions. Now, to give you an example of a closed question, are you thinking about blue elephants right now? Well, you weren't before I asked the question, but unavoidably you will have pictured a blue elephant as soon as I asked you that question. It's a closed question because it leads you into a particular direction. It closes your mind to other things, and it gets you focusing on something that I have in mind, not what you have in mind. Other examples of closed questions are simply they require only a yes or a no answer, and so they close down the conversation. Open questions are about exploration. They open up new avenues. They open up new areas. They help people to express things a bit more clearly. Now, one of those examples is in the field of coaching, grow or T-grow as a model. Now, I learned this framework many years ago. I had the privilege to be at a coaching conference where Miles Downey, who is one of the originators of the framework, was speaking, and I was interested to hear him talking about how it came about. He and his colleagues, I think including Tim Galway, were coaching in a corporate environment, and it was really effective and it was working very, very well. But to their surprise, what happened was that their clients started trying to analyze what made it successful. And it was actually their clients that told them, do you know, this is what you do. This is the pattern that you follow. And we love it. That you make sure that we've started with a topic. You make sure that you nail us down into our intentions and our goals and the outcomes that we're looking for. You check out the reality of the current situation. And out of that, all sorts of interesting things happen because we realize that we've already been working on the problem, that there are things that are around us and available to us that we haven't, that in reality they're there right now, but we haven't actually recognized that and drawn those in to help us solve the problem. Then you take us into generating new solutions, you open our brains, you get us thinking about lots of different options in all different kinds of ways. And finally, you make sure that we have chosen a way forward out of the situation. So we've got T for topic, we've got G for goals, we've got R for reality of the current situation, we've got O for options, and W for the way forward. And the way Miles Downey expressed it, he said, wow, that's what we do? Really? So it's not a theoretical framework that's been applied to help coaches. It's come from the reality of practice. That's been a pattern has emerged from effective practice. But it's a great example of a framework that enables you to ask great questions. Now, alongside this video, I will attach a handout which suggests a whole bunch of questions that you can try using in following the T-GROW formula. But don't overemphasize this word formula. A couple of times I've been privileged to be invited to demonstrate coaching in front of masters in business coaching students with the University of Sydney. Believe me, that's quite a challenging experience, having to sit down one-on-one with somebody I've never met before and go through a coaching process when you've got 20 or 25 adult, very experienced students watching and analysing and listening to everything that you're doing. But both times, because I didn't know the client, I didn't know what topic they were going to come up with, in my head, I had the GROW framework. Afterwards, in debriefing with the students, I checked what they knew, what they saw. I got great feedback in terms of the skills that I'd used. That's beside the point. The interesting thing is that they had all learned the GROW method and they thought that it was artificial and false, but not one of them had recognized that I'd used it as my guiding framework in either of these coaching sessions. So make it real. Don't be, get familiar with it. Don't get too tied down by it. One way of practicing it would be, again, my recommended way here would be to have a small group, maybe 3 or 4 of you, where somebody is the coaching client, where you start with a topic. One may be an observer, and the others, perhaps 2 of you, can take it in turns to be looking at the questions that I've suggested here in the GROW framework, and keep thinking about what is the most effective, what is the most insightful question that I could ask next, and take turns to work through that and get familiar with the process. Moving on, another skill in questioning, and it might surprise you, is silence. Sometimes coaches need to be very comfortable with just waiting for the client to process something. There is a question, there is something in their mind, there is a question they're trying to answer. Don't interrupt. Just stay silent. And one of the best ways to do that, we are tempted to say something in those silences, is to get your tongue down on the bottom of your mouth, behind your bottom teeth. You'll find it very difficult to ask a question when your tongue's down there. It sounds silly, but it's a practical thing you can do, which helps you to stop. Another question that I sometimes ask a client is, what do you think I should ask you next? Now, when you've got a good, strong, trusting relationship and you're in the flow, and I really don't know what is the best next question, then I just put my hand up and I'm honest about that and I say, what do you think I should ask you next? And almost every time, well, it might take a little bit of reflection, the client will tell me what that question is. And I love that. That's absolutely great. Finally, there's a 2-word question that throughout my career I've found is the most effective to ask my clients. And it's this: what else? And what else? Anything else? And it just takes them deeper and deeper and further into whatever it is that they're thinking about. Simple question. But it is perhaps the most powerful question in the coach's playbook, if you like. Michael Bungay Stanier, who's originally an Aussie, is now living in Canada, is one of, I think he's rated number 2 leadership expert globally after Marshall Goldsmith. Terrific guy. But Michael talks about this a lot. What else? Think of that one. Use it often, and use it maybe one more time than you think you should. So let me finish this segment by asking you a question. What has been the most valuable thing that's come out of this part of the coaching course? What is the most valuable thing that you've taken from what I've just been sharing with you? And I ask that question because it is the best way to end any coaching conversation with a client. It's about making myself accountable. It's about helping the client to reflect on all of the things that all of the ground that we've explored, and to pull it together at the very end. Sometimes there may not have been anything valuable in the conversation. It doesn't happen very often. But if that's the case, you should find out about it. So end your coaching conversations with what has been the most valuable, the most important thing that's come out of this conversation. Hope this has all been useful to you. Once again, over to you.